All right, let's just jump right into it. We hear all the time that AI is this magic bullet, right? It's going to solve everything, make our lives a breeze. But what if all that convenience? What if it comes with a hidden price tag? What if by leaning on these amazing tools a little too much, we're actually, letting our own mental muscles get weak? Today, we're going to tackle a question that I think is on a lot of our minds. Is AI actually making us dumber? It usually starts with a feeling. It's this gut sense, just like physicist Sabine Hossenfelder is talking about here, that something's, well, a little off. It's that moment after you've had an AI whip up an email or summarize a dense article, and you get this sinking feeling that you didn't really do the thinking. You just proof-fed it. And I think a lot of us are starting to ask, what are we really losing in that deal?
Now look, to be fair, this kind of anxiety is nothing new. Every huge technological leap has come with this sort of trade-off. I mean, Socrates was worried that the invention of writing would make us all forget how to remember things. Teachers freaked out that calculators would mean nobody could do basic math anymore. And let's be real, how many of us could get around a new city without our GPS? This whole idea of cognitive offloading has been with us forever. But AI feels different. It feels different because it's the first tool that's offering to offload the entire thinking process for us, from the first spark of an idea all the way to the finished product.
So to really get to the bottom of this, here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to kick things off with something called the automation paradox. Then we'll look at what science says is actually happening inside our brains when we use AI. After that, we'll dig into some of the hidden societal costs that are happening right now. And then we'll wrap up by figuring out how to use AI as a tool, not a crutch, and what it really means to think in this new age. Okay, first up, the automation paradox. Yeah, we're gaining all this amazing efficiency, but it feels like it might be coming at a pretty steep cognitive price. So here's the core of it. There's this really subtle but incredibly important shift happening in what we do. For pretty much all of human history, if you wanted to make something, you had to do the work. You had to do the research, the writing, the problem solving. But now, we're becoming reviewers. We're becoming editors of a machine's work instead of wrestling with the problem ourselves. And that might sound like a small change, but it has absolutely massive consequences for how our brains engage with information, how we learn, and what we actually remember. So how does this really affect our brains? This isn't just a feeling anymore. Let's get into the actual science. We have studies now that are literally looking inside people's heads to see what's happening on a neurological level when we hand our thinking over to AI. So check this out. There was this really eye-opening study from the MIT Media Lab. They split people into 3 groups to write essays. Group 1, they could only use their own brain power. Group 2 could use Google, the old-fashioned way. And Group 3 was told to go to town with ChatGPT. And the whole time, scientists were hooked up to their brains with EEG scans, measuring just how hard their brains were working.
And the results were, well, they were stunning. Get this. A whopping 83% of the people who used ChatGPT couldn't accurately quote a single thing from the essays they had just finished. I mean, just think about that for a second. The task was done, but the information, the knowledge, it just never made it into their long-term memory. They basically outsourced the work and they outsourced the learning right along with it.
And the EEG scans showed us exactly why. If you look at this chart, you can see that the brain activity, the connections linked to memory, creativity, deep thinking, it was about half as strong in the ChatGPT group compared to the people writing on their own. Their brains were literally less engaged. It was kind of like the neurological version of coasting downhill on a bike instead of actually pedaling. And researchers actually have a name for this leftover effect. They call it cognitive debt. And just like financial debt, it's super easy to get into, but really, really hard to get out of. The MIT study found that when they later asked the AI group to write a new essay without AI, their performance was still pretty bad, and their brain activity stayed low. It's almost like their cognitive muscles had gotten weaker, making it harder to do the heavy lifting themselves even when they had to. And it's not just about how engaged we are, it's also about originality. A different study, this one from Carnegie Mellon, found this thing they call mechanized convergence. Because think about it, millions of us are all using the same few AI models, so our answers are all starting to sound the same. The essays in the MIT studies started to feel generic, all using similar words and sentence structures. The human reviewers had a pretty simple but brutal critique. The work just felt soulless. But, this whole thing isn't just about our individual brains. While the headlines love to scream about future robot apocalypses, there are some very real, very concrete societal costs happening today that we really need to be talking about. AI researcher Sasha Luciani just nails it here. Obsessing about what some super intelligent AI might do in 30 years is a great way to ignore the very real problems and ethical headaches that are sitting right in front of us right now. So researchers point at three major harms that are often totally invisible to us as users. First, there's a huge environmental cost. Training just one big AI model can burn through as much electricity as hundreds of homes in a year and gulp down millions of liters of water just to keep the data centers cool. Second, you've got massive copyright issues, with models being trained on the creative work of countless artists and writers, usually without anyone asking for permission. And third, these tools can actually bake in and even amplify some of our worst societal biases. And this table is a perfect example of that bias in action. Researchers used a tool to see what AI image generators think different jobs look like. And the results, well, they just pour gasoline on old stereotypes. So for example, in the real world, about 70% of CEOs are male. But the AI, it generates pictures of male CEOs almost 100% of the time. And for nurses, it's the complete opposite. So the AI isn't just reflecting our world, it's amplifying its biases and feeding us a warped version of reality that can really mess with our perceptions. So, with all these risks, to our own minds and to society at large, what do we do? Well, the answer isn't to just throw the technology away. The key is to change how we think about it. We need to learn how to use AI as a powerful tool that makes us smarter, not as a crutch that lets us get away with not thinking at all. And honestly, we face this choice every single time we open one of these tools. You can use AI as a crutch. Just hand over the keys and let it drive. That's the path of least resistance, for sure, but it leads straight to that cognitive debt we were talking about. Or you can use it as a collaborator, a creative partner that can challenge, improve, and build upon your own initial ideas. And that path can actually make you smarter and more creative. So how do we actually do that? Well, here's a pretty simple framework. Remember in that MIT study when the brain-only group finally got to use AI after they had already done the hard work? Their performance and their brain activity actually went up. They knew how to use the tool effectively because they'd already built a solid foundation of understanding. So the rule is simple. Think first. Do the hard work yourself to build that deep knowledge, and only then bring in AI to help you augment, refine, and improve. And all of this brings us to our final and maybe most important section. What does it really mean to think in the age of AI? And what are the uniquely human skills we all need to start focusing on, like yesterday? This right here, this is what makes us different. An AI can crunch data faster than any human could ever dream of, but it can't do this stuff. We need critical thinking to question the AI's answers and spot its mistakes. We need creativity to come up with truly new ideas, not just mashups of its training data. And we desperately need empathy and emotional intelligence to understand the human context that data will never, ever capture. These are our superpowers in a world that's becoming more automated by the second. In the end, we're all left with this one really deep question. As we keep weaving these powerful tools into every single part of our lives, we have to make a conscious choice about which parts of being human we want to keep for ourselves. If we offload the very struggle, the learning, the thinking, what's actually going to be left? Look, AI isn't the villain in this story. It's an incredible tool with the potential to help us solve some of the world's biggest problems. The real danger isn't the technology, it's our own capacity for mental laziness. The way forward is going to take intention, it's going to take awareness, and a real commitment to protecting our own minds. The goal is simple, but it's totally up to us to make it happen. Use AI, but don't let AI use you.